Happy Sunday. I am on day 2 of Dr. Joe Dispenza's conference. And man, it is, it has been, what has it been? I'm assuming it's going to be life-changing. Already, it's really forcing me to go beyond where I currently am, just in my own thought processing and view of the world. And when I say the world, I actually mean the dimensions of reality. And by that I mean the elements of the past, the future, the present, and then also the physical world, and then the spiritual world. And Sundays we talk about spiritual intelligence. We really, a heartbeat and an anthem of the Knowing Show is talking about our core intelligences and talking about our emotional intelligence, activating that. What does that look like, feel like? The intellectual intelligence, the IQ, the intellectual quotient. What does that really mean in relation to the emotional intelligence? How are they different? How are they disparate and unique in and of themselves? And then the physical intelligence, which is something newer that I've been touching on and learning about myself. And then the spiritual intelligence, which is really what I dedicate Sundays to. And this is the intelligence by way of activating our spirit. And the concept of these 4 intelligences is something that I've been learning about and kind of stumbling upon. And so the Knowing Show is really the space where I invite other people to have conversations with me. I do musing in real time with you. And this whole conference, already just in the last 24 hours, I have so much to think about and consider, because he's talking about things that are very much so scientifically based, talking about the neural pathways in our brain, talk about rewiring the brain, talking about how neurons that fire together wire together, and how we can effectively reproduce or produce new neural pathways. But it really starts at analyzing what are our thoughts and how the power of our thoughts have the ability to effectively go and create our reality. And if we want to see real change in our life, we effectively need to change our personality in order to change our personal reality. And I really love, there's a lot that I'm learning from him just by way of, I love the way that he talks. I love the way that he leads his events. There's a lot kind of in the practical learning and application, but then there's also just this whole other world that I haven't been introduced to, which is quantum physics. And so it's really expanding my mind in terms of even just knowledge. It feels like a muscle that's being worked out for the first time. Y'all, I did not, in high school, somehow I managed to get by without taking chemistry, and biology was a joke with the schooling that I had. It just yeah, it was kind of a joke. And so math and science are the 2 areas that I probably feel most insecure about. Hand me a philosophy book and I will eat that up and have so much fun doing so. I will write a paper gladly, but I will not, when it comes to math and science. So this is definitely something that is definitely outside of my wheelhouse. And it's just such a good, man, it's such a good experience. How often are we putting ourselves in the rooms that we really don't know much, if not anything about? How much are we actually expanding our minds and expanding our own capacity for knowledge and new information? So much of all the algorithms are feeding us. They're tailored to feed us the content that we want to hear and the news that we want to hear. And how many of us exist in the echo chamber of our family and friends, repeating back the same things that we ourselves know and think? And so really it begs this question for a self audit right here, right now for me. And I welcome you to do the same. How often am I putting myself in these types of rooms where it's just completely stretching, like a rubber band, stretching my own mental, emotional, spiritual, physical capacity to take in something new, and then allow myself to sift through all of my default autopilot behaviors, thoughts, patterns, beliefs, and saying, okay, are any of these out of alignment with who I say that I want to be? And is any of this new information actually in accordance with who I need to be? And so what needs to go and what needs to come in and take its place? And, I've brought up James Allen many times. He is the author of As a Man Thinketh. Absolutely love this book. It's such a short, it's like a little pamphlet. And he talks about our minds being akin to a garden. And so if we're going to pluck out an old mindset, an old belief, we need to put something new in its stead, lest the weeds grow in its place, and lest something by not our own intention grow. And so as I'm looking down at my pages of notes, and a woman asked me today, she was like, I see that you're taking notes. Like, why do you do that? And I told her, I was like, well, one, it really helps me retain the information better. But then two, I want to talk about it because I know the truth, which is if I don't actually take the information that I'm hearing and try to speak it back, then the information that I hear, it's like starting to form new neurological pathways, but then it fundamentally breaks because I'm not actually reinforcing what's beginning to grow. And so by way of talking about it, we're reinforcing that which we hear. And I had this moment, my brother called me a couple weeks ago regarding a podcast that he heard on Joe Rogan about the benefits of nicotine. And so my brother went on to basically explain the benefits of nicotine, how it's, the FDA has come in and completely changed the narrative among all these other elements of how nicotine is actually something that's so beneficial for us. And I'm super excited because we're having some conversations this upcoming week about health specifically. I'm very excited to have my friend Dmitry Smirnov on, and we're going to be talking more about health just in general. I also have another conversation coming up with a woman who we're talking about some deeply devastating effects on women's health that it's not being talked about. And so when we talk about knowing, it's not just about knowing ourself on an emotional level. It's knowing these other intelligences that all are comprised of and necessary to constitute the human being. And so as I look at my notes, I'm just kind of like, where do I even start? Because today was so good. And it was really, it was intense in different ways. So one of the things that Dr. Joe talks a lot about, obviously, is the science behind what it is that he's encouraging us to do through this process, which is primarily meditation. This is like his conduit to help people rewire and repattern their brains. And so many elements of what he talks about is how we operate with old data based in the past. He effectively says our brain is an artifact. It's constantly working off of old data, old information. And so apart from our intention to create a new vision for our life and a new vision for ourselves, we're just fundamentally rooted in the past and operating off the past. And then we look at people, we look at relationships, we look at our very lives, ourselves, through the lens of the past. And what's so interesting, and so I've been holding this kind of duality throughout the day, the importance of knowing, the importance of actually going back and doing the work to know the past versus, okay, we're going to go and just do the rewiring so that now I have a better vision for my life. I believe to my core that both are so incredibly important. We have to know what it is that we need to change. And we also need to know what our new target is. So far, one of the things that I'm realizing is that he's really guiding us through how to kind of activate our internal intelligences. And this is something that I'm so excited about because effectively the quantum field, which I'm a baby in learning, is a whole brand new intelligence. And it's this whole other realm of what is possible. And I don't want to talk about that tonight. Maybe I will by the end of the week. We'll see how well I learn all of this. But for now, I really want to consider the benefit and the necessity of going back in the past, understanding what was so that we can identify this is what I want to change and this is who I want to become. Because otherwise, there's just kind of this blind throwing of the darts of, oh, I don't want to feel this way anymore. So let's go ahead and change and go through what really is scientifically proven, the meditation that he takes you through, which is effectively just we do it ourselves. It's not by any words that he's saying. It's by us learning how to activate different energy centers within us that belong to us. It's that whole example of what I've been talking about of our intelligences are our boardroom. And if we know how to activate them, how to listen to them, how to tune in, and then we make a wise decision, man, we can create. And isn't that the goal? And this is so fun. A couple months ago, actually, while I was in Italy, I just really sat with this question: what is the purpose of knowing? Why should we know? What is the intent? What's the goal? Just to know ourselves, just to know each other? Well, okay, great. That doesn't hold much weight for me. Why else? And so what the two that I really landed on is we know ourselves for the purpose of authentic, organic creation, something new. If we're not connected to our own unique self, our creation is just going to be a mirror of everyone around us. We'll be proceeding. We can't help but proceed from a place of horizontal alignment because we've been indoctrinated and embedded with what everyone else thinks. And so if we never have the time, cultivate the ability to go inward and thus get to know who am I uniquely made to be? What do I think? What do I believe? And sure, it might be a conglomerate of multiple opinions and thoughts and expectations. However, the more we can tap into our own unique knowing, then we can have even a chance to create something that is of authentic origin, that is something new, that is something different, that's something beyond what anyone else has created. And so that's the first purpose and reason for knowing is creation. And then second, it's connection. My therapist brought this up to me shortly after my marriage dismantled and just completely fell apart. He said, Christine, in order for you to be known, you have to first know who you are. It takes two. Just like it takes two to tango, it takes two people knowing of the other person and thus allowing yourself to be known. But I have to do the work to know myself in order to thus allow myself to be known. And the thought of hoping that somebody else will come in and know me is, let's just say it's hypocritical at worst and lazy at best. It's so self-deceiving to sit on our laurels and say, oh, I just can't wait for someone to come in and do my work for me. And that's how I lived for the majority of my marriage as I was and even, before getting married, I just was expecting this Hollywood fairy tale Disney movie of the prince on the white horse coming in and knowing me and rescuing me from the work that I had to do to get to know myself. And when I realized that, oh gosh, I felt so sick to my stomach when I looked in the mirror and I saw that. I was like so horrified. And at the same time, it makes sense that I believed that and thought that, given what I was kind of how I was indoctrinated growing up. And indoctrinated, when I say that word, it's really any input which we receive, which comes in and shapes and wires our brain patterning. And so indoctrination doesn't mean that it's bad, but what it does mean is that something other than us is coming into our mind and teaching us how to think, how to view the world. It's shaping and positioning the lens through which we view the world. And so this is where it is so incredibly important that we examine every single input with the utmost intention. What is feeding my mind? How am I being shaped and cultivated into who I'm becoming? And so if we're not doing that self-analysis on the daily of who am I becoming, what are the inputs that are being fed to me, we never will be able to demarcate between the inputs in and of themselves and then be able to identify between them and say, this serves me, this doesn't. And so attending this event is very intentional. This is a new input. It's brand new. Today was the very first time I ever really truly did a meditation. And It was hard and I wasn't very good at it. And it's interesting being around other people who have never done this either. You know, this is some people's very first time. Some other people it's their like 60th meditation. And it's really fun to explore something new for the purpose of growth. And frankly, I really want to analyze for this next year. I actually posed this question to myself almost a week ago on my birthday and was just examining what are the core ways that I really want to grow. And I actually outlined that for this event because there's some real clear beliefs and mindsets that I want to see shifted in my life. And a few of those are number one, I wasn't planning to read this, and now that I'm looking at it, let's go. Oh gosh. Number one is leaving behind attachment to my marriage as my story. And that's something that's so in my subconscious, but I know that it's there. And so part of even just me saying that out loud is to like pull it out and be like, okay, let me examine this attachment to this story. And even, y'all, this is the beauty about just shining the spotlight of truth on whatever it is, whether it's a narrative that has shame around it, a narrative that we didn't even realize was in us, whatever it is, the second we shine the spotlight of truth on it, it immediately loses some of its power. And so even me saying this out loud, it's so funny. I saw this on my piece of paper and I knew that I was going to read it. And I just thought, oh my gosh, here we go. But even in just saying it, I already feel like a little bit more free. And so as I'm saying and going through the rest of my list, it's just exciting knowing that in speaking the truth, there's freedom on the other side. And sometimes it's a lot more work than just speaking the truth. And let me not withhold the element that does not mean that there's not consequences. Number two, elevating beyond knowing. So I am really, really curious, and already I'm examining, like I've stumbled across these four intelligences: emotional intelligence, intellectual intelligence, physical intelligence, and spiritual intelligence. And today I learned about quantum intelligence, which got me so excited. I'm like, there's a fifth intelligence. I knew it. And so I have clearly a lot more learning to do in this regard, but like how cool. I'm already doing number two, which is elevating beyond knowing, because I want knowing to be something that's constantly evolving and growing. I want it to have literally a life of its own apart from me, but that I can breathe life into, and then other people can breathe life into as well. And the third element that I really am eager to change over the next year before my 33rd birthday is aligning with the potential of my relationships. So I just love my parents. Even just the thought of them, man, it makes me so, I just really, really love them. And I don't want to waste time. I feel that so strongly. I do not want to waste any time. Life is so precious. Ever since losing my brother-in-law at 20, he was 26 years old. He had a Harvard application out. He had just had his baby girl. She was 3 weeks old when he was killed. And we just don't know. We do not know how short life is. Even our wonderful, wonderful friend, Steve Sims, he was not even 60. And he had so much more life to live. And so may I never take time for granted, but I have to live with the utmost intention. And so that's why knowing is of the utmost importance, is so that I live life with intention and I don't waste time and I can make the most out of the relationships lest they be squandered. And so that's number three, aligning with the potential of my relationships. Number four, reprogram. I love this. Haven't read this since yesterday. Reprogram my mind for the mission of knowing. And what I mean by that is, who do I need to be in order to champion this mission? Who do I need to be? Because y'all, I know I have mindsets that are currently getting in the way of me speaking the truth. And man, it's wild realizing that, and even saying it out loud. Again, it loses some of its power. I realized this when I was in France, that this was one of the first realizations I had when I was doing my 8 weeks alone. I realized how the truth The truth is my nemesis. The truth is the thing that is most terrifying, to square off not only with the person in the mirror, with me versus me. I conquered that a couple years ago, but squaring off with the truth horizontally, like over the last year, and I really believe into this year as well. I'm working now over the last like 3 to 4 months and then into this next year. It's okay, how do I maintain vertical alignment in horizontal relationships? And so this has been just such a deep pursuit of mine, and I know that I still have a lot of work to do here. But one of those elements that I'm really struggling with is I'll just say it. I won't sugarcoat it. One of the things is that I love who I am alone. And when I show up with other people, I am so scared that they will not like who I show up as. And not that they won't like it, but that it will be too much and that they won't be able to walk in their power. So it's like I love being in my power alone. And when I say my power, it's like the essence of who God made me to be. And so the thing I think I'm most scared of is that I'll show up in alignment with who I was made to be, and then the other person will move out of alignment because I'm in alignment. And I saw that a lot of times. I've seen that a lot in my relationships in the past for multiple reasons, right? And there could be, multiple reasons. And so in just my desire of who is the woman that leads and champions this mission of knowing, where are my weaknesses preventing that woman from coming forth? Where do I need to amplify the parts of me in terms of leadership or even truth in and of itself? And so when I talk about reprogramming for the mission of knowing, I think that I had an encounter with my ego today. And I think ego is really the thing that needs to continuously be examined. And I actually have an idea for this. So I'm going to do this exercise maybe tomorrow, and then I'll probably talk about it later this week. I've got guests over the next couple of days, but maybe I'll jump on tomorrow night after the event. But I have this idea of how to really confront my ego, because again, truth is my nemesis until I shine a spotlight on it and call it out, and then the fear over it loses its power. So fear is what keeps the truth hidden and in the dark. But the sooner I shine the spotlight on it, which requires so much courage. I saw it like visibly today. I like saw courage in my mind's eye, and I was like, wow, like courage is the thing that actually unlocks our voice and gives us the wherewithal to speak and call out what the truth is. And then fear cannot coexist with the truth. So long as courage is present. So that's number 4, is reprogramming my mind for the mission of knowing. And then number 5 is cultivate consciousness. The more that I'm doing the work to recognize when I'm not living in the present moment, but living in the past or living in the future, or living on autopilot, living on default behaviors, belief systems, that's when I'm like, oh, and I bring consciousness to it, and then I can move out of that default behavior. So I really want to grow in that regard, to just living more consciously, living with greater intention, to the point of, I freaking love my parents, and I want to live with intention in every relationship. And sometimes that means not having a relationship with a particular person, let's say, because we only have so much time. So intention goes both ways, intention to the best yes, and intention to a very meaningful no. And I need help in the latter. I need to say more no's. Okay. Number 5 is consciousness. Number 6, I cannot find in my little notebook. Did I have a 6? Oh, yes. Oh, I love this. Number 6, teach my body and condition my emotions for the future. So one of the things Dr. Joe talked about, which I just absolutely love, is that we effectively need to be visualizing, not just visualizing, like seeing it, but really teaching ourselves a new emotional stasis to then be able to receive when the new future arrives. And I really, really love that. You know, I talked about this yesterday evening. This is my little pink journal. and it holds my eulogy in it. And when I turned 30, I wrote my eulogy. But then I turned it from future third person, Christene was, or I guess past, right? Christene was in third person. And I changed it to first person present tense. And this eulogy I read every single morning for a year. And since then, I kind of have read it off and on. But what it did and still continues to do is that it preconditions my emotional state for the person that I want to be. And I get to be that person now. A lot of these elements are talking about who I want to be as a leader and who I am at the end of my life, retroactively being said about me. But if I can turn this into first person and present tense, I'm effectively training my mind and training my body and my emotions. All of my intelligences are being activated and turned on in relation to this woman, this ideal that I've created. But I have to first create it, and then I have to speak out, in both with repetition and intention. And one of the things that he was talking about today, Dr. Joe Dispenza, he was talking about not just the benefit of meditation, but also breath, and really actually using breath work to effectively energize our body so that we're in a heightened state to receive a new emotional and bodily wiring. So I thought that was super interesting. And I'm going to be learning more about the breath work piece tomorrow, because I did that today. I did it 3 times. We did 3 different meditations, and the breath work, it was so invigorating, and I felt so incredibly alive. And then it's like, okay, now let's speak the truth of who I say that I want to be. Let's speak out the future of what it is that we say that we want. And when I say that, say what we want, I think that we actually have a lot that is spoken from us that's not from us. It's actually what's coming out of our mouths is what other people have said. And so that's where, talking about a self-audit, we have to analyze the words we speak. Is what I espouse in alignment with my true beliefs? So we don't just analyze our words against our beliefs, but we also analyze our behavior against our beliefs. And then we analyze our belief against our ideal. Because at the end of the day, how we act, how we think, what we say, what we do, all of that just gets us closer to this ideal. And I say ideal in air quotes for those listening, because the ideal is such a precious, what is it? What is the ideal? It's not an avatar. The ideal is the potential. It's I love this. I've never actually put into words the ideal. So this is a good exercise. Y'all, the ideal is what can be now if we understand how to alchemize our intention and our emotions, all of our intelligences, to turn them on and activate them so that we can live now, today, in alignment with our ideal. I've heard people say this before. They're like, well, why are you not doing that now? So we talk a lot about, I want to be somebody who travels, one day I'll do this, one day I'll do that. And then when we actually analyze, well, why not now? There's not a lot of really good reasons why we're not living that way. And so when I wrote my eulogy, so this is something I wrote in my eulogy that really forced me to look in the mirror. I was saying that I want to be this person, but I was not living accordingly. So one of the things that I said, I am an explorer of all things and a cultivator of soul. Oh, yes, this is right. I am an explorer of all things and a cultivator of souls, a lover of music and dance and philosophy and nature and cultures and wines and foods and art and peoples. I view the world through an array of colors, not limited to black and white, but rather existing in awe and wonder of the shapes and contrasts and possibilities of each person or place or thing. So I wrote this 2 years ago. And then I looked at my life and realized that, yes, I was traveling, but I was only traveling for speaking engagements or business events. And then I would leave. I would never actually immerse myself in the culture. So if I'm saying I am a lover of music and dance and philosophy and cultures and wines, I wasn't living that way. And so then I had to say, okay, I either need to delete this from my eulogy and remove it and be radically honest with myself, or I need to now be radically responsible to live in alignment with who I say I want to be. And obviously that's a fun example because I then went on a 3-week trip to the UK in 2023. But that's just such a good example of, man, I'm saying one thing and doing another. I'm thinking one way. This is where the power of thoughts is so incredibly important. If I am saying, oh, this is a good one for me. If I'm saying that I want knowing and I vision knowing, and my mission around knowing is that it's going to be as big and meaningful and impactful as something like the Oprah brand. It doesn't have to be me, but it has to be knowing. Well, then if I just go and hide my light under a bushel and I'm not brave, that there's who's going to champion this mission forward? So I either need to change that statement or change my thinking, which is I'm so scared that I'm going to be judged or not liked, all of those imposter syndrome thoughts that, as I've talked to more and more entrepreneurs, every single person feels that way. And not even just entrepreneurs, mothers and fathers. It's always that constant question of, am I enough? Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're talking about this. This is so exciting. Okay, worthiness came up really, really big for me today. Worthiness just, oh man, I think it was session 3. Where I wrote down worthy in bold, and I have to remember why. All right, so one of the things that really, really struck me is effectively if I have to have a fundamental belief in who God says that I am. Otherwise, I will never live that way. So at the end of the day, am I believing what I say about me and what I say about the world over what God says about me and what God says about the world? And that was my ego moment earlier, was recognizing that I actually trusted me over God. And it was in a moment of meditation. And it was effectively this whole concept of like, ooh, I could cry. This is so wild. He was encouraging us to effectively get to that quantum level, which is like get out of this physical realm and like get to the next level of consciousness. And I realized that I was terrified to do that because for the majority of my life, I've lived in such a way where I've felt this need to prove that I'm worthy of love. And so the thought of getting to the quantum level and kind of removing myself from this physical dimension, it's like, well, who's going to love me? Like who's going to say that, who's going to basically come after me if I like literally, and obviously this is all figurative, like leaving the physical dimension in a meditation, right? So obviously I'm still here, but just so deep in my subconscious, this is part of the reason for meditation, is that you break down the conscious, the self-conscious walls so that the subconscious can come forth, and then you can really kind of better understand what's really going on inside of you. And in this process of being told, hey, leave this physical world mentally and get into this next level of the quantum, I just felt this really strong resistance and this really strong fear. And then I realized in that moment, 1, I realized I trust myself over trusting God. And then 2, I realized that when I was 9 years old, this really core belief formed in my mind, which is that it's me and God against the world. And so I am the only one that can take care of me. And so it was so interesting because in that moment, I realized that as I'm trusting myself over God, I will never be able to believe truly in my own worthiness, because what he says takes higher value and law over me or anybody else. That's where the hierarchy of truth is so critical. And so realizing that today was so important, that, man, where am I basing my foundation of truth? Who's the final naysayer in my book of truth, so to say? And And as I'm thinking about this now, it was just really important because I think I still need to do some work there. I think I still have some digging to do, that it's not that easy to just recognize it, and so this is where I'm really curious about Joe's continuous work with us in terms of meditation of like, okay, but we can change that. I can change that belief. But this is why knowing matters, y'all, is once we know that the belief is there, only then can we change it. So we have to know the truth in order to thus see real change. And so whether that's knowing our thoughts, knowing our emotional state, knowing our dreams, knowing our ideal, knowing our behaviors, knowing our eulogy, knowing the full real, when I say knowing, it is the type of knowledge that propels change. It's akin to a soldier getting an order and they're saying, yes, sir. Well, the delivery of the order is under the guise and expectation that it will be followed through. So when I say knowing, I'm talking about the type of knowledge that propels change. You cannot help but change as a result, because otherwise, did you know it in the first place? It's like this biblical story of a man who's digging in a field and he finds this hidden treasure and he's so excited and he goes and sells everything he has to go purchase the field where the treasure is. But if the man found the treasure and then didn't do anything about it, did he really find it in the first place? Because the natural inclination and reaction is to do exactly what he did, which was to go sell everything he had and buy the field because the treasure was worth it. But if we don't have a reaction to the truth that we come to know, do we really know it? So I'm talking about the knowing that elicits change, that elicits not just a heart knowledge, but that it transcends into a life change. So when I say knowing our worth, that's what I mean. It's the type of knowing that really fundamentally changes the way that we view ourselves. And so that was a confrontation with ego today, and I have a plan of attack against ego that I'm excited to try out, and I will keep you posted on that probably in the next day or two. But in the meantime, my question for you is, where does your worth lie? In whose narrative? What's your hierarchy of truth? And where does your worthiness lie in that regard? I'll talk to you tomorrow.